So, friends, here we are again, asking the question, is that legal? Today's question, is Donald Trump sending troops to LA legal? Let me not bury the lead. Given the facts as we know them and the applicable federal law, the answer is no. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. Is that legal? Can he do that? Friends, how many times have we asked that question regarding Donald Trump's conduct while president? And here we are again, with Donald Trump calling up the California National Guard and sending U.S. Marines to LA in violation of federal law. You know, something's got to give. Something's got to give. I just sure as hell hope it's not our democracy. Let's start with the new reporting. This from Reuters. Headline, does U.S. law allow Trump to send troops to quell protests? And that article begins, President Donald Trump deployed National Guard troops to California after days of protests by hundreds of demonstrators against immigration raids, saying the protests interfered with federal law enforcement and framing them as a possible form of rebellion against the authority of the U.S. government. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on Monday mobilized 700 active duty Marines as part of the government's response to the protests. California sued the Trump administration on Monday to end the unlawful deployment of troops in Los Angeles County and return the state National Guard to California Governor Gavin Newsom's command. Trump cited Title X of the U.S. Code, a federal law that outlines the role of the U.S. Armed Forces, in his June 7 order to call members of the California National Guard into federal service. A provision of Title X, Section 12406, allows the president to deploy National Guard units into federal service if, and it's a big if the U.S. is invaded, or there is a rebellion or danger of rebellion, or the president is unable, with the regular forces, to execute the laws of the United States. Section 12406 allows troops to protect federal agents who are carrying out law enforcement activity and to protect federal property. For example, National Guard troops cannot arrest protesters, but they could protect U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents who are carrying out arrests. California's lawsuit said the deployment of troops in the state without the governor's consent violates federal law and the U.S. Constitution's 10th Amendment, which protects states' rights. The state argues the deployment does not meet any of the requirements in Title X because there was no rebellion, no invasion, and no situation that prevented the enforcement of U.S. laws in the state. Trump also did not consult with Newsom before deploying the National Guard, violating Section 12406's requirement that orders to deploy the National Guard shall be issued through the governors of the states, according to the lawsuit. And friends, recently I've been hearing the question asked, well, has this ever been done before, where a president of the United States calls up, federalizes a state National Guard over the objection of a governor? Get this. This reporting from U.S. News and World Report. Trump became the first president in roughly 60 years to call in the National Guard without a request from a governor. According to Elizabeth Goyton, Senior Director of the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center for Justice, it most recently happened when President Lyndon B. Johnson sent troops to Alabama to protect civil rights demonstrators in 1965. That's right, friends. President Johnson activated and federalized the Alabama National Guard to protect civil rights. This from History.com. LBJ sends federal troops to Alabama to protect a civil rights march. On March 20, 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson notifies Alabama's Governor George Wallace that he will use federal authority to call up the Alabama National Guard in order to supervise a planned civil rights march from Selma to Montgomery. Intimidation and discrimination had earlier prevented Selma's black population, over half the city, from registering and voting. On Sunday, March 7, 1965, a group of 600 demonstrators marched on the capital city of Montgomery to protest this disenfranchisement and the earlier killing of a black man, Jimmy Lee Jackson, by a state trooper. How far the office of the presidency has fallen under aspiring dictator Donald Trump, who sends troops to LA to trample civil rights. And you know, friends, why in the world the Republican Party is all in supporting this tyrant, this autocrat in his totalitarian fever dream is beyond me. So friends, let's end with this. And I've said some version of this previously, but there was a time in our nation's history when people had to put it all on the line and had to fight to save the republic. And that looked like men, predominantly men, taking up weapons, taking up firearms, stepping out onto open grassy fields, putting life and limb on the line, sometimes fighting brother on brother, and they were scared and they were desperate, but they were determined and they fought and they saved the republic. The Republican Party doesn't have to do all that. They don't have to take up arms. They don't have to step out onto fields and fight brother on brother or sister on sister. All they have to effing do is cross the aisle to save democracy. Cross the aisle to save democracy against a tyrant, an autocrat, an aspiring dictator, and the hell he is trying to plunge our nation into. We see it. There's no mistaking it. Just cross the aisle to save democracy. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.